So if we established yesterday that the quarterback position is not the biggest question mark on the team, we established that by putting it in the bottom 5 of the top 10 question marks facing Pitt football this season. What is the biggest question mark? We counted down 10 through 6 yesterday. What about top 5? What about 5 through 1? What makes the cut? We already eliminated, Pat Narduzzi stomaching the new offense. I think he'll put up with it as long as, he'll put up with it all season. He might fire Cade Bell after the season, but he's going to put up with it all year. Eliminated the young linebackers as one of my biggest concerns. The new corners, even the quarterback. I put it number 7 on the list of biggest questions facing this team, just behind the punter, which, like I said yesterday, the punter's a big concern, but I'm going to put most offense and defense positions that I have big concerns about above that. I guess I'm just not too concerned about Nate Yarnell. I think he'll be at least average, if not better. We'll see. But if we eliminate that as one of the top 5 biggest questions facing this team, what are the 5? What's left? What else do we count down here? 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 as the biggest questions facing this team in 2024, at least as we sit here on May 29th, looking ahead of the season, which is still a few months away. Let's count down those 5 biggest questions, and also a couple scheduling things. A couple little scheduling quirks that I wanted to bring up. I wanted to talk about real quickly, and so I'm going to do it here to get us started as we dive into those 5 questions. But it's something that, I don't know, maybe give you something to think about today. We'll see. All right, let's get it going here on the Morning Pitt, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's Wednesday, made it to the middle of the week. It's one of these weeks where there was no school on Monday. Some people didn't work on Monday, and so it sort of feels weird that we're already to Wednesday, but here we are. Just a couple more days left in the week. Glad you could get it started here on the Morning Pitt on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. If you're watching us on YouTube, which I hope you are, like the video and subscribe. That way you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. And of course, whether you're watching or listening or just imagining this podcast in your head, go check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com to get all of the Pitt sports news you can possibly handle. All right, scheduling things. I want to talk about this because Pitt released its promotions schedule yesterday. And you might say to yourself, like, dude, there's no way you can spend any amount of time talking about home game promotions on this podcast. And you're right. And I'm not going to take all 20 minutes to talk about it, but there's like 2 things I want to bring up. All right, there's 2 things I want to point out that, ultimately involving 3 different games. But there's 2 basic things I want to mention about the promotion schedule and what it might mean and what it might say. And again, you're probably saying, like, it doesn't mean anything, you goof. It's a promotion schedule. And maybe we're all just, we have that natural reaction because of the Pirates. But the reality is, I think there's a couple things to note about Pitt's promotion schedule. Now, this is very well maybe the kind of podcast where I release this Wednesday morning, and, later in the morning on Wednesday, sometime around lunchtime, I'll get a call from authorities saying, here's the reason we did this. And if you would have just asked, then you could have gotten the right answer and you wouldn't have sounded like an idiot on this Morning Pitt. Well, too bad for you, authorities. I'm going to sound like an idiot and make my own assumptions about what you did here. Because when I look at the schedule, promotions, let's run it down real quick. All right, August 31st against Kent State, it's Healthcare Day. September 14th against West Virginia, it's the Pitt Hall of Fame game. September 21st against Youngstown State, it's Homecoming. October 12th against California, it's Band and Spirit Day. October 24th, Youth Football Day for the Syracuse game. November 9th against Virginia, it's Hail to Heroes and Family Weekend. Hail to Heroes / Family Weekend. And November 16th, the home finale against Clemson, Education Day / Staff Appreciation Day. Now, you might say to yourself, seriously, please move on. You can't possibly find things to talk about here. Oh, ho, ho. But I can. And if you were listening closely, and if you have any kind of, history with this program, and you've followed them for a while, and you have a general sense of their scheduling quirks, you should have noticed a couple of things. The first one that stands out is this. Homecoming. Remember when I said that was? September 21st for Pitt's game against Youngstown State. Now, I always remember, and there probably are some exceptions, but just briefly looking at the last 2 years, they're not exceptions to this. And I think in most years, it's not an exception. For the most part, homecoming is typically in October, and typically against an ACC opponent. Last year, let me bring it up since I have the schedule here, 2023, homecoming was the Louisville game on October 14th. In 2022, homecoming was the Virginia Tech game on October 8th. You know what? These promotions are pretty easy to find. Let's just look at 2021, just to add, 3 years of sample size here. Okay. Damn it. Homecoming in 2021 was the New Hampshire game on September 21st, or September 25th. Okay. So that blows up my theory a little bit, because I only had to go back 3 years to find another year when homecoming was not in October, was not an ACC opponent. But the last 2 years it has been, and I think in a lot of years previously it has been October games against conference opponents. Now, I'm sure they have a good reason for why they switched it up this year, for why they moved homecoming to September 21st, as opposed to what seems to me to be the obvious option, either October 12th against Cal or October 24th against Syracuse, although Syracuse is a Thursday night, isn't it? That would be a good reason not to have that game. So October 12th against Cal. Why not do it then? Why have youth football day on a Thursday night? It feels weird to put homecoming against an FCS opponent. Then granted, they did it 3 years ago. I don't know why you would do it this year. I'm not a big fan of that. I think you want to have more of a marquee opponent, something that's going to draw at least a few more fans. I don't think homecoming in and of itself is a big enough draw. I think you need to have at least something of a quality opponent, and Syracuse wouldn't be much, or Cal wouldn't. I mean, maybe Cal actually would be an ideal candidate for that one. An intriguing opponent, somebody people might be interested to see because they haven't really seen them before. They've never seen them, come to Pittsburgh. As opposed to Youngstown State. Not really sure I get that one. Maybe it's not as big a deal as I thought it was initially now that I see they did it in 2021, but it still seems odd to change course there and move out of October ACC games to put it in a late September FCS game. I'll tell you the other thing that jumped out at me, and this may or may not have caught your attention. This one I can back up with history and recent precedent. It's very interesting to me on the Twitter image that they released. They referred to November 16th as Education Day and Staff Appreciation Day. Notably missing from that is Senior Day. You go back to 2023, Boston College very clearly introduced as Senior Day. The Duke game in 2022 very clearly referenced as Senior Day. 2021, who they play, Virginia, I think, to end the regular season schedule, listed as Senior Day. I'm looking, if you go to actually buy tickets where they list the promotion schedule, it does mention Senior Day there. It's curious that they left that off of the Twitter graphic that they released and just called it Education Day, Staff Appreciation Day. Maybe they felt like they couldn't fit it on the graphic, but I believe Pitt has very smart and intelligent graphics people. I believe they could have found a way to work that one in. I don't know if you start de-emphasizing Senior Day, given transfers and guys not finishing, and guys might walk and then return, or they might not walk and and then they leave, or whatever it is. I don't even know if Pitt is intentionally trying to de-emphasize Senior Day here, but it's curious that they left that off of the Twitter graphic. I mean, look, Pitt fans have been de-emphasizing Senior Day forever. Pitt fans rarely show up for Senior Day. It's quite frankly, it's almost embarrassing. So maybe you don't even market it as much anymore because you're not really drawing many people to the stands to see it. Once you take all the parents and the families out of the stands and put them down on the field, it's you cut a significant chunk of the crowd out, or at least the early arriving crowd. I don't know what the solution is. You don't do it after the game. You're not going to be able to do it at halftime. So I'm not sure there's a good solution, but boy, it's not usually a big event Like I say, people don't typically show up for it, and it's strange that Pitt left it off their graphic. Might have just been an editorial decision, or not an editorial decision, might have just been an aesthetic decision. Felt like it was too big to list it there alongside Education Day and Staff Appreciation Day and Senior Day. But it seems to me that would be the biggest event of the day, more so than Education Day and Staff Appreciation Day. Last year, what did they call it? 2023 was Senior Day and Panther Club Appreciation Day. 2022 was just Senior Day. I think same thing with 2021. Or excuse me. Yeah, 2021. Let me just scroll there. Yeah, it's just Senior Day. I don't know. But it's something I noticed there. I think you should make the homecoming game against Cal, and I think you should just still promote it as Senior Day for that final game. All right, a couple of the other thing interesting, the Athletic they did some predictions. Stuart Mandel and some other people got together and did predictions on the first 3 weeks of the season, what the TV and times will look like for the premier games, ABC, CBS, NBC, all the ESPNs and that kind of thing. And there were two Pitt predictions in there. The Cincinnati game in week 2, they said, has regional interest, so it gets the 7:30 slot on ESPN2. And then the week 3 backyard brawl at Acrisure Stadium gets a noon slot on ABC. Now, this is just their predictions for what's going to happen. It's not written in stone. This is just what these guys are sort of projecting or predicting. The West Virginia game is probably going to be a noon game, almost like 100% going to be a noon game. The Pirates are hosting, I think, Kansas City that night at 6:40. You're not going to have a Pitt game that starts any later than 12:05 with a Pirates game that night at 6:40. So that's almost locked in, I would think. And I think if they put it at noon, yeah, they'll probably put it on ABC. That makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of interest and appeal in that game. So that would be logical. Cincinnati on the road, I don't hate that game being in primetime. We kind of have fun with those primetime games. We do the live show here. We'll go live after that game. Those live shows at night are always a little more rowdy and a little more interesting, I think, than rather than some of the mid-afternoon or early evening live shows that we do, post-game shows during the season. So that'll be fun. We'll have a good time with that if that's what the schedule ends up being. So I could see it happening for both games, and I wouldn't hate it for either one. I think it'd be a good time to have the backyard brawl, and we could do our mid-evening post-game show after I get back from the stadium. And like I say, Cincinnati game, we'll get out the bottle and we'll start talking. It'll be a good time. Yeah, it'll be fun. So anyway, just a couple of scheduling things to look at and consider as we move through. And we'll see when start times start getting announced. All right, 5 biggest questions for this team, picking up from where we left off yesterday. Number 5, I'm putting the defensive tackle position and just whether Pitt can get anything out of the D tackles. And I know there's a lot of concern about the defensive tackles. They lost 3 6-year seniors and lost a 5th-year senior from that group. I've always sort of felt like production at the defensive tackle position, if you get something out of the D tackles, it's a luxury. It really is. I think it's a luxury to get high-end production out of the defensive tackles. I think guys like Elijah. I just mixed Aaron and Kalijah together. Aaron Donald and Kalijah Cansey. Guys like that are rarities. You know what I mean? And Pitt has had a few of them. Jalen Twyman, McWilliams. But it's a luxury. It's a luxury more than, sort of an expectation. I think what you expect out of that position is something less productive. And that's okay. I don't think the lack of stats and backfield production from Devin Danielson and Tyler Bentley and David Green and DeAndre Jules last year is why their defense struggled. And I think there's a lot of reasons, but I don't think that's why they struggled. I think in this defensive scheme with the defensive tackles, you want them to be strong at the point of attack to hold up against the run. And if you get that guy, if you get that Donald or Cansey or Twyman or whoever it may be who can get into the backfield and make plays, great. Now you've got an extra weapon, an extra pass rusher. And it's a luxury. It's not a necessity. So I put them a little bit lower, but because there's just no experience, no history of production, no resume whatsoever for these guys that they're going to be counting on this year, I got to move it into the top 5 because Like I said, you need them to be strong at the point of attack. You need them to be strong against the run. And then I don't know if they're going to do that. We'll find out about Nick James. We'll find out about Nakai Johnson moving inside. We'll find out if Sean Fitzsimmons is ready to make an impact. We'll find out if Elliot Donald is ready to make an impact. We'll find out if some of the young players, like an Isaiah Neal, are ready to step up. But so it's a concern, but it's number 5. It's not in the top 4. Number 4 is the wide receiver position. And I've talked about this a bajillion times. I mean, I don't know how many times I have to go over this question. You just need that top guy. I was talking to a friend yesterday, and we were talking about Nate Yarnell. And I was talking about how, some of the stats that I brought up either yesterday here or on the website, I forget where it was, but about how Yarnell, if you take his stats from the final 2 games of the season, the Boston College and the Duke game, you project him over 13 games, it's like a 3,000-yard season with 20 touchdowns and 6 picks and like 67% completion percentage. Like, great. One of the best seasons in the ACC. He'd be a top 5 quarterback, top 4 quarterback in the ACC if he performed at that level. And I was saying this to a friend of mine, and he said, yeah, but that was with Bub Means. And like, wow, how the perception has changed of Bub Means. While I was driving the Bub Means hype train and people were reluctantly getting on or just refusing altogether, to get to the end of the season to the point where you're saying, yeah, but back then he had Bub Means. It's quite a transition. It's quite a change in how we view him. But I don't think Bub Means was great in helping the completion percentage or the efficiency. And I think that's something Yarnell was able to manufacture on his own. But Bub Means he was a wide receiver 1. And he presented that threat that other teams had to account for. And thus far, no one has emerged as that threat for this team. Maybe it'll be Kenny Johnson. Maybe Kanate Mumfield steps into that role. Maybe one of the Western Carolina guys can be that. But nobody's been it yet. Nobody's been at that level yet. And so until they do, we're just sort of, cautiously optimistic, waiting to find out if they can play at that level, if they can produce like that. And that's a big question for me because you can believe in this scheme. You can believe that Cade Bell knows what he's doing. You can believe that he can scheme guys open and all these things that we've heard about. We need to actually see it. And you still, even if he's got a great system, you still need the players to make plays. The Johnnies and Joes versus the X's and O's. That old cliche. You still need guys to make those plays. And they don't have anyone that has a proven track record outside of maybe Kanate Mumfield of making those plays at this level. Raphael Williams and Sincere Lee did it at the FCS level, but they haven't done it at this level. And so we need to see them do it. And until they do, it's a big question mark for me. Not as big of a question mark, though, as the defensive ends. This group, they just weren't very productive last year. And they've lost the 2 most productive guys from that group. The 3 most productive guys, really, if you want to include Nate Temple, from that group. And slightly bullish on Nate Matlack. Think Chief Borders, Bam Brema, Sincere Edwards. Somebody's got to make plays. Jimmy Scott, David Ojebwe. Somebody's going to have to make plays. Somebody's going to have to make an impact. Somebody's going to have to rush the passer. But you've got your 2 primary transfers at that position this offseason are guys who are doing different things in different defensive schemes, thinking, and they're coming here thinking that, boy, if they play in this scheme, this will really open opportunities up for them. Okay, it might, but that's what you're banking on. That's what you're counting on, is that, this new opportunity will allow these guys to have all kinds of production at defensive end. That's a hope, not a plan. And that's a big concern for me. You've got to be able to get pressure, particularly when I talk about, the inexperienced corners, the new corners they're going to be relying on. You've got to be able to get pressure. And we don't know yet if these guys are going to be able to get pressure. And so that's a huge question mark for me. Number 2 biggest question mark to me is the offensive line depth. Like I've said, again, one of my mantras, one of my things I've repeated over and over this offseason, I like the starting 5. Branson Taylor and Ryan Baer, they'll be fine at offensive tackle. They're going to be good. Terrence Moore at center, that's good. B.J. Williams, I think, is ready. And then if it's Lyndon Cooper, whoever it is that steps in at the other guard spot, I think that's solid. And maybe you've even got a little bit of interior depth, because you either bump, Ryan Jacoby to the backup role, or Lyndon Cooper goes down to a backup role, and with Jacoby ahead of him. But I just don't know anything about any of the guys behind them. I don't know if they're any good. I don't know if they're going to be good enough to step in if one of them has to, and one of them probably will have to. It's the offensive line. Somebody always gets hurt. Somebody always misses time. You're always going to be counting on somebody from the depth. And I just don't know if they're up to the task. I think there's some big concerns there. Because as good as the scheme may or may not be, if you can't block, it doesn't matter. And the number one question mark for this team, the biggest thing I'm curious about, the biggest thing I don't know about, my number one question: will the offense work? Will Cade Bell's offense translate to the ACC? Excuse me. And so many of the things we've talked about here in the yesterday and today, whether it's the quarterback, the receiver, the offensive line, all these things, they all play into it. Yeah, I mean, those are all elements that are sort of wrapped up in this question. But it has to work. Because if it doesn't work, Pat Narduzzi's, he's going to be in trouble. If this offense doesn't work and this team struggles and only wins 3 or 4 games or something like that, or even 5, this next offseason is going to be real, real interesting. And you would say that Narduzzi would be pretty firmly on the hot seat for 2025. Will the offense work? Narduzzi did a full 180 on his offensive philosophy, took a risk, a chance on a young, unproven offensive coordinator. He's putting a lot at stake here and taking a lot of chances. Will it work? It's the biggest question. It's the single biggest question facing this team, I think. Maybe you think something different. Do you have a different idea on what the biggest question facing this team is? What your biggest concern is? Your biggest question mark? Let me know in the comments, and let me know if you have any thoughts on the schedule and that whole setup as well. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, to make sure you don't miss any of our Pitt video content. Of course, we have the live show tonight at 8 p.m. Hope you can tune in for that. Looking forward to it. And then, stay tuned to Panther-Lair.com for all the Pitt sports coverage. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com, football, basketball, and recruiting. It's all right there. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks so much for tuning in today. It's been fun as always. Looking forward to tomorrow as we move through the week. Don't forget the live show tonight at 8 o'clock. We'll see you there. Then we'll be back for another Morning Pitt tomorrow morning here on the youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.